Roman Sutter stood at his kitchen counter at 6:30 a.m. sharp, carefully cutting a peanut butter sandwich into perfect triangles. Not rectangles. Never rectangles. Leo wouldn't eat them if they were rectangles. "Leo," Roman called softly. "Breakfast is ready, buddy." He waited, listening for the familiar pattern of small footsteps. His 6-year-old son appeared in the doorway, still in blue spaceship pajamas, clutching a worn, stuffed elephant. Leo didn't make eye contact. He never did. But Roman knew his son was aware of everything in the room, the hum of the refrigerator, the slight flicker of the overhead light that Roman needed to fix, the exact placement of every item on the kitchen counter. "Good morning," Roman said, keeping his voice even. Not too loud. Never too loud. Leo didn't answer. He rarely spoke. Instead, he walked to his chair, the blue one, always the blue one, and sat down. Roman placed the plate in front of him. 2 triangles. A small cup of apple slices cut exactly the same size. A blue cup with exactly 6 ounces of apple juice. Roman watched as Leo inspected the food, then began to eat methodically. This was their morning routine, unchanged for nearly 2 years. As CEO of Sutter Architecture, Roman could afford to have someone else do this. He'd tried 5 different nannies, but none of them understood Leo like he did. None of them cared enough to learn the specific rituals that kept his son's world from falling apart. The phone rang, and Roman grabbed it quickly, before the sound could startle Leo. "Hello? Morning, workaholic." His sister Kate's cheerful voice came through. "Just checking that you haven't forgotten about tonight." Roman sighed. "Kate, I told you, I can't do blind dates anymore. It's just dinner, Roman. 2 hours of adult conversation that doesn't involve building permits or Leo's therapy schedules." Roman glanced at his son, still eating carefully, 1 bite at a time. "The last woman you set me up with asked if Leo could just try harder to be normal. Melissa was a mistake, I admit it, but Zariah is different. She works with kids. So did the therapist who quit after Leo had a meltdown in her office. Just give her a chance. 2 hours. That's all I'm asking. Mrs. Davis already agreed to watch Leo." Roman rubbed his forehead. Mrs. Davis was their elderly neighbor who somehow had a magic touch with Leo. She was the only babysitter who'd lasted more than a month. "Fine. 2 hours. Great. 7 o'clock at Roselli's. Don't wear one of your boring suits." After hanging up, Roman turned back to Leo, who had finished eating and was now lining up his apple slices in a perfect row. "I'm going out tonight, buddy," Roman said gently. "Mrs. Davis will stay with you, is that okay?" Leo didn't answer, but his hands paused briefly in their arrangement of apple slices. Roman took that as acknowledgement. Later that day, after dropping Leo at his special education class, Roman drove to his office downtown. Sutter Architecture occupied the top 2 floors of a sleek building that Roman had designed himself 5 years ago, before Leo's diagnosis, before his wife Angela had decided that having a child with autism was more than she signed up for, and left them both. "Morning, Mr. Sutter," his assistant greeted him. "The Westfield clients are waiting in conference room 2, and the contractors called about the delays at the Monroe site." Roman nodded, pushing personal thoughts aside. Here in his office, everything made sense. Buildings had problems that could be solved. Blueprints could be corrected with an eraser. People were much more complicated. The day passed in a blur of meetings, calls, and decisions. Roman was respected in his field, known for his precise work and innovative designs. No one here saw the exhausted single father who sometimes slept on the floor beside his son's bed during bad nights. At 6:30 p.m., Roman found himself standing in front of his closet, staring at his collection of tailored suits. Kate had said not to wear a boring suit, but he honestly didn't know what else to wear. It had been so long since he'd been on a date. Before Leo's diagnosis, before everything changed, he finally selected dark jeans and a grey button-down shirt. As he dressed, he heard Mrs. Davis arrive and greet Leo with her gentle grandmother voice. "I left his routine chart on the refrigerator," Roman explained, coming downstairs. "He needs the blue blanket for bedtime, not the green one, and if he gets upset—" "Roman," Mrs. Davis cut him off kindly, "we'll be fine. Leo and I understand each other." Leo was sitting on the floor, meticulously arranging colored blocks in a pattern only he understood. He didn't look up when Roman said goodbye, but his small hand made a tiny waving motion. That was enough to make Roman's heart twist with love and worry. Roselli's was a small Italian restaurant downtown, intimate without being overly romantic. Roman arrived exactly at 7, habitually punctual. He gave the hostess his name, and was led to a corner table. She wasn't there yet. Roman checked his watch. 7:03 p.m. He ordered water and tried not to think about Leo, about whether Mrs. Davis would remember that he needed his stuffed elephant to sleep, about all the ways this date was probably going to be a disaster, like all the others. At 7:08 p.m. a woman walked through the door, and Roman felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a moment of being completely present, completely aware. Zariah Wynne didn't look like she was trying to impress anyone. She wore a simple yellow dress that brightened her brown skin, her hair in twists pulled into a casual updo. She moved with a kind of quiet confidence that immediately caught Roman's attention. When the hostess pointed to his table, Zariah smiled, and Roman found himself standing up, suddenly conscious of his height, his awkwardness. "You must be Roman," she said, her voice warm and rich. "I'm Zariah. Sorry I'm late. One of my therapy sessions ran over." "It's fine," Roman said, pulling out her chair. "I haven't been waiting long." As she sat down, Roman noticed she didn't wear much jewelry or makeup. There was something refreshingly genuine about her, as if she knew exactly who she was and didn't need to prove anything. "So," she said after they'd ordered drinks, "Kate tells me you're an architect." "I own Sutter Architecture," Roman replied, falling back on the easy topic of work. "We specialize in commercial and high-end residential projects." Zariah nodded. "I think I've seen your buildings. Didn't you design that new public library downtown? The one with all the natural light and reading nooks?" Roman was surprised. "Yes, that was one of my passion projects. I love that space. I take some of my therapy kids there sometimes. There's something about the way it's designed that makes them feel safe but also curious." For the next 20 minutes, they talked about architecture, about the power of physical spaces to affect mood and behavior. Roman found himself relaxing slightly, impressed by her insights. Then came the inevitable turn in conversation. "Kate mentioned you have a son," Zariah asked. Roman's walls immediately went up. This was usually where things started to go wrong. "Yes, Leo. He's 6. "That's a great age," Zariah smiled. "What's he like?" Roman took a deep breath. He'd learned it was better to be honest up front. No point in getting attached to someone who would run away as soon as they understood the reality of his life. "Leo is on the autism spectrum," he said flatly. "He doesn't speak much. He has very specific routines that can't be broken. He doesn't like to be touched, especially by strangers. He has meltdowns when things get too loud or unpredictable." He paused, waiting for the usual response. The sympathetic head tilt, the awkward, "That must be so hard," followed by a quick change of subject. Instead, Zariah simply nodded. What does he love? What makes him happy? The question caught Roman off guard. He loves drawing, patterns, space. He knows everything about the planets and stars, and elephants. He has a stuffed elephant he carries everywhere. "That sounds like a pretty cool kid to me," Zariah said, taking a sip of her wine. "It's not easy," Roman felt compelled to add. "My life revolves around him, his needs, his schedule." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Zariah replied. "That's what good parents do. Most women find it overwhelming, the reality of dating someone with a child who needs so much." Zariah looked him directly in the eyes. "You don't scare me, Roman, and I don't run from complex." Something in her voice, the certainty, the lack of pity, made Roman's throat tighten unexpectedly. The rest of dinner passed with surprising ease. Zariah told him about her work as an art therapist, specializing in children with communication difficulties. She had a way of telling stories that made Roman laugh for what felt like the first time in years. When they finally left the restaurant, Roman realized with surprise that they'd been talking for almost 3 hours. "I had a nice time," Zariah said as they stood on the sidewalk outside. "Me too," Roman replied, and meant it. "I'd like to see you again." Zariah smiled. "I'd like that too." As Roman drove home, he felt a strange lightness. He tried to temper it with realism. Sure, dinner had gone well, but Zariah hadn't met Leo yet. She hadn't seen the daily struggles, the meltdowns, the constant vigilance required. Still, for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope. Mrs. Davis reported that Leo had gone to bed without any problems. After she left, Roman quietly opened Leo's bedroom door. His son was asleep, clutching his elephant, surrounded by his carefully arranged stuffed animals. Roman stood watching him breathe for a long moment, overwhelmed by love and fear in equal measure. For the next 2 weeks, Roman and Zariah had several more dates, always carefully scheduled around Leo's routine, always after Leo was in bed with Mrs. Davis watching over him. They went to quiet restaurants, took walks in the park after dark, spent an evening at an art exhibition. Roman found himself telling Zariah things he hadn't told anyone, about the night Leo was diagnosed, about the moment his wife had packed her bags and said she wasn't cut out for this life, about the crushing fear that he wasn't doing enough to help his son. Zariah listened without judgment. She shared her own stories. Growing up in a family that valued education above all else, her decision to become an art therapist, despite her parents' wishes for medical school, her previous relationship with a man who had used her compassion like a resource to be depleted. He didn't want a partner, she explained one night as they walked through the empty park. He wanted someone to carry his emotional burdens without having to do any of the work himself. Roman nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. I worry about that. About asking too much of someone. About Leo being seen as a burden rather than a person. Zariah stopped walking and turned to face him. Leo isn't a burden, Roman. He's a child trying to navigate a world that wasn't built for him, and you're not asking too much by wanting someone to see that, to see both of you, clearly. In that moment, Roman wanted to kiss her, but something held him back. The knowledge that once Zariah met Leo, everything might change, that this connection they were building existed in a bubble, separate from the reality of his life as Leo's father. That bubble burst unexpectedly on a sunny Saturday morning. Roman had taken Leo to Parkside Gardens, a quiet green space that was usually empty in the mornings. Leo loved watching the birds and insects, cataloguing them in his precise, methodical way. They were sitting on a bench, Leo carefully drawing patterns in his special notebook, when Roman heard a familiar voice. "Roman!" He looked up to see Zariah walking toward them, dressed casually in jeans and a light blue top. His heart immediately started racing. This wasn't how he'd planned for them to meet. He wasn't prepared. "Zariah," he said, standing up awkwardly, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I live just a few blocks away," she explained, then glanced at Leo, who was completely focused on his drawing, seemingly unaware of the conversation. "Is this Leo?" Roman nodded, suddenly tense. "Leo, this is my friend Zariah." Leo didn't look up or acknowledge the introduction, which wasn't unusual. Roman was about to apologize when a series of events unfolded with horrifying speed. A large dog broke free from its owner, running toward them, barking loudly. At the same moment, a child nearby let go of a balloon which popped against a tree branch with a sudden sharp crack. Leo's body went rigid. His notebook fell to the ground. Roman recognized the signs immediately, the sensory overload, too much noise, too much unpredictability. Leo's hands went to his ears, pressing hard, his body starting to rock violently. "Leo, it's okay," Roman said quickly, reaching for his son. But he knew they were heading for a full meltdown. Leo's face contorted, a high keening sound escaping his throat. Roman braced himself for what was coming. The screaming, the self-harming behaviors that sometimes accompanied Leo's worst episodes. He was vaguely aware of Zariah standing nearby, witnessing this reality of their lives that he'd tried to explain but could never fully convey in words. But then something unexpected happened. Zariah knelt down on the ground near Leo, not too close, respecting his space. Without saying a word, she began to draw in the dirt with her finger. Simple, deliberate lines. A house, a sun, a tree. Leo's rocking slowed slightly. His eyes, though still wild with panic, flickered towards Zariah's drawing. Roman held his breath, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever thread of connection was forming. Zariah continued drawing, adding details to the house. A door, a window, a chimney with curling smoke. She hummed very softly as she worked, a gentle, rhythmic sound. Leo's hands slowly lowered from his ears. His breathing, which had been rapid and shallow, began to steady, his gaze fixed on Zariah's drawing. Then, with movements still stiff from tension, Leo leaned forward. He extended one finger and drew a cloud in the dirt next to Zariah's son. Roman felt tears spring to his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time Leo had engaged with a stranger voluntarily. Zariah smiled. "Thank you," she said to Leo, her voice gentle. "I forgot it was about to rain." Leo didn't speak or look at her, but his body relaxed visibly. He picked up his notebook and began drawing again, incorporating the same cloud shape he'd drawn in the dirt. Roman met Zariah's eyes over Leo's head, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. "How did you know to do that?" he asked later, after Leo had calmed completely and was now contentedly watching a ladybug crawl across the park bench. Zariah shrugged. "In my work, I've learned that sometimes words aren't the answer. Sometimes a different language works better. I've never seen him respond to anyone like that, not even his therapists. He told me what he needed, Zariah said simply. I just listened. As they sat together on that park bench, something shifted in Roman's world. For so long he'd been Leo's only translator, the only one who tried to understand the language his son spoke. Now watching Zariah and Leo sitting quietly side by side, each drawing in their own way, Roman felt a wall inside him begin to crumble. For the first time since Leo's diagnosis, since his wife's abandonment, since taking on the lonely role of being everything to his son, Roman allowed himself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was room in their carefully constructed world for someone else, someone who didn't need words to understand, someone who saw complexity not as a burden, but as another form of beauty, someone like Zariah. After their unexpected meeting in the park, Roman couldn't stop thinking about how easily Zariah had connected with Leo. For 3 days, he replayed the scene in his mind. Leo drawing that cloud next to her son, the way his son's body had relaxed from the edge of panic into calm. On Wednesday evening, after tucking Leo into bed, Roman finally picked up his phone and called Zariah. I'd like you to meet Leo properly, he said, the words coming out in a rush. If you want to, I mean. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Are you sure? Zariah asked. I know that's a big step for you. Roman took a deep breath. I'm sure. They arranged for Zariah to come over that Saturday morning. Roman spent Friday night cleaning the already spotless house, moving furniture an inch to the left, then back again, wondering if he was making a mistake. He'd never introduced a woman to Leo intentionally before, not since Angela had left. The risks felt enormous. Saturday morning, Roman prepared Leo as best he could. We're going to have a visitor today, buddy. Her name is Zariah. She's the lady from the park who drew in the dirt with you, remember? Leo didn't respond verbally, but he did pick up his elephant and hug it tightly, a sign that he was processing the information. When the doorbell rang exactly at 10 a.m., Roman felt like his heart might beat out of his chest. He opened the door to find Zariah standing there, holding a simple plant in a blue pot. I thought Leo might like to help me take care of this, she explained. It's a sensitive plant. When you touch the leaves, they fold up like they're shy. Then they open again when they feel safe. Roman was touched by her thoughtfulness. Come in, he said, stepping aside. Leo was sitting in the living room, arranging his colored blocks in precise rows. He didn't look up when Zariah entered, but his hands paused briefly in their work. Hi, Leo, Zariah said softly, not moving too close. I brought something to show you. She sat down on the floor, leaving plenty of space between them, and placed the plant on the coffee table. Roman watched, holding his breath, as Leo glanced quickly at the plant, then back at his blocks. This plant is special, Zariah continued, keeping her voice gentle and even. It can tell you how it feels without using words. Watch. She lightly touched one of the leaves with her fingertip. Slowly, the leaf folded itself closed, then the ones next to it followed. Leo's attention was caught. He stared at the plant, fascinated by the movement. It's shy, Zariah explained, but when it feels safe again, it will open back up. Sometimes it just needs time. Leo looked at the plant for a long moment, then got up and moved to his drawing table in the corner. He picked up a crayon and began to draw. Roman and Zariah talked quietly while Leo drew, both keeping an eye on him. After about 20 minutes, Leo returned, holding a piece of paper. Without looking at either of them, he placed the drawing on the table next to the plant. It was a picture of the sensitive plant, remarkably detailed for a 6-year-old, with arrows showing the leaves closing and opening. That's beautiful, Leo, Zariah said. You really noticed how the plant moves. Leo didn't respond, but he didn't walk away either. Instead, he carefully touched one of the plant's leaves with his finger, watching intently as it folded closed. Something warm bloomed in Roman's chest as he watched his son interact with both Zariah and the plant. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden breakthroughs, no movie moment where Leo suddenly started talking. But it was significant. Leo was letting Zariah into his world, in his own way. The morning passed quietly. Zariah stayed for lunch, helping Roman prepare Leo's sandwich, cut into triangles, never rectangles. She seemed to intuitively understand Leo's needs, speaking softly, moving predictably, not forcing interaction. When it was time for her to leave, Leo was back at his drawing table. Zariah waved goodbye to him from across the room. To Roman's surprise, Leo made a small waving motion with his hand without looking up. Roman walked Zariah to the door. Thank you, he said, suddenly feeling emotional, for understanding him, for not trying to make him be someone he's not. Zariah looked up at him, her brown eyes serious. Leo is exactly who he's supposed to be, Roman. The world is what needs to change, not him. Roman fought the urge to pull her into his arms. Instead, he simply said, "Can I see you again, both of us, I mean?" Zariah smiled. "I'd like that very much." Over the next few weeks, Zariah became a regular visitor at their home. She never pushed Leo for interaction, but was simply present, ready to engage when he showed interest. She brought art supplies, interesting textures, and once, a kaleidoscope that captivated Leo for an entire afternoon. Roman found himself looking forward to these visits, with an intensity that sometimes frightened him. He was letting down his guard, letting Zariah see the most vulnerable parts of his life, his son, their daily struggles, the routines and rituals that kept their world together. One evening after Leo had gone to bed, Roman and Zariah sat on the back porch, talking quietly under the stars. "I never thought I'd find someone who would understand," Roman admitted. "After Angela left, I just assumed that was it for me, that Leo and I were on our own." Zariah was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something? About Angela?" Roman nodded, though he felt the familiar tightness in his chest whenever his ex-wife was mentioned. "Do you think she really couldn't handle Leo's diagnosis, or do you think she couldn't handle watching you handle it?" The question startled Roman. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes," Zariah said carefully, "when one parent is able to connect with a child in a way the other can't, it creates a different kind of pain, a feeling of being left out or not needed." Roman considered this. "Maybe. I don't know. She never really tried to understand Leo's world. She wanted him to fit into hers." Zariah nodded. "That happens a lot. People want neurodivergent kids to change to make the adults more comfortable instead of the other way around." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching fireflies blink in the darkness. "What about you?" Roman finally asked. "You mentioned a relationship that didn't work out." Zariah sighed. "Jason. He was charming, intelligent, always the center of attention. I was drawn to his intensity at first, but I slowly realized he only had room for his own emotions, never mine." "How so?" "He would have these big emotional crises about work, about his family, about his dreams. And I would listen, comfort him, help him work through it. But when I needed the same, he would get impatient, change the subject." Zariah shook her head. "I became his emotional support system, not his partner. I promised myself I'd never do that again." Roman felt a flicker of worry. "Is that what this feels like? With me and Leo? Like you're just here to support us?" Zariah turned to look at him directly. "Not at all. You don't expect me to fix things, Roman. You don't treat me like I'm responsible for your happiness. You're doing the hard work yourself. You're just letting me be part of it." Relief washed over him. "I want you to be part of it," he said softly, more and more. Their first kiss happened that night, under the stars on his back porch. It was gentle, tentative, both of them aware of the fragile thing growing between them. As spring turned to summer, Zariah became a fixture in their lives. She didn't move in. They both agreed it was too soon for that kind of change. But she spent weekends at their house, gradually learning all of Leo's routines and preferences. Leo began to show signs of progress. He still didn't speak much, but he started drawing pictures for Zariah, leaving them in places where she would find them. Once he even reached out and briefly touched her hand when she showed him how to mix colors to make green. "It's not about making him normal," Zariah explained to Roman one night. "It's about helping him communicate in ways that work for him." Roman's sister Kate was thrilled by the relationship, taking full credit for their happiness. "I told you she was different," she said smugly during a family dinner at her house, while Zariah was helping Leo in another room. "I can't believe you almost refused to go on that blind date." Yeah, you're a genius," Roman laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "Mom and Dad want to meet her," Kate added casually. Roman's smile faded. "I don't know if that's a good idea yet." "Why not? Things are going well, right?" Roman hesitated. His parents were traditional, wealthy, and set in their ways. His father had never fully understood Leo's diagnosis, often making comments about Roman being too soft with his son. And though they would never admit it, he knew they had certain expectations about the kind of woman he should be with, someone from their social circle, someone who fit easily into their world. "I'm just not ready for that," he said finally. But the introduction became unavoidable when his parents decided to throw an elaborate party for their 40th wedding anniversary. Roman couldn't refuse to attend, and he couldn't bear the thought of going without Zariah. "Are you sure you want me there?" Zariah asked when he extended the invitation. It sounds like a fancy affair. I need you there, Roman admitted. My parents can be challenging. The night of the party arrived, and Roman felt on edge as he, Zariah, and Leo pulled up to his parents' sprawling estate. Leo was dressed in his formal clothes, the only button-up shirt and dress pants he would tolerate. Zariah wore a simple but elegant burgundy dress that made her dark skin glow. Remember, if Leo gets overwhelmed, we leave immediately, Roman said for the third time. No matter what my parents say. Zariah squeezed his hand. We'll be fine. I brought his headphones and his drawing pad. Roman's mother, Eleanor Sutter, greeted them at the door with air kisses and a too-bright smile. Roman, darling, and this must be Zariah. Kate has told us so much about you. Her eyes flickered briefly to Zariah's dark skin, then away again. Roman felt a surge of protectiveness. And Leo, my handsome grandson. Eleanor bent down, reaching to pinch Leo's cheek. Leo flinched back, pressing against Roman's leg. Mom, remember, Leo doesn't like to be touched unexpectedly, Roman reminded her, keeping his voice level. Eleanor straightened, her smile tightening. Of course, I forgot. Well, come in. Everyone's dying to meet your friend. The evening that followed was a study in subtle tensions. Roman's father, Richard, spoke to Zariah with exaggerated politeness, asking questions about her interesting career choice, in a tone that suggested he found nothing interesting about it at all. Art therapy, he repeated when Zariah explained her work. And that pays the bills? Dad, Roman warned. It's a legitimate question. Richard defended himself. I'm just concerned about practical matters. Zariah maintained her composure. It pays well enough, Mr. Sutter. And I find the work fulfilling. Was all Richard said in response. Throughout dinner, Roman watched his parents interact with Zariah, noting every veiled comment, every subtle dismissal. When his mother mentioned her friend's daughter, who works at that fancy hospital downtown, a neurosurgeon, can you imagine? Roman nearly snapped. Leo, thankfully, was managing well with his headphones and drawing pad, sitting quietly beside Zariah at the dinner table. She had thoughtfully brought foods he would eat, anticipating correctly that the elaborate meal wouldn't include anything Leo would touch. The real tension came during dessert, when Richard brought up Roman's latest architecture project, a community center in a lower-income neighborhood. I still don't understand why you're wasting time on that when the Hamilton hotel chain is practically begging you to design their new resort, Richard said, swirling his brandy. The community center can't be paying much. It's not about the money, Dad, Roman replied. It's about giving back. Richard snorted. Giving back. Since when did the Sutter family need to give back? We've earned everything we have. Zariah shifted slightly in her seat, and Roman could tell she was uncomfortable. Actually, she said carefully, the neighborhood where Roman is building the community center is where I grew up. It's going to make a real difference for families there. The table went quiet. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. Oh, she said finally, how nice. The dismissive tone in his mother's voice made Roman's blood boil. He was about to respond when he felt Zariah's hand on his arm, steadying him. It is nice, Zariah agreed, her voice calm. Roman's design incorporates spaces for children with sensory needs like Leo. It's groundbreaking work. Richard cleared his throat. Well, I suppose that's admirable. The conversation shifted, but the damage was done. Roman could feel Zariah withdrawing, becoming more quiet as the evening progressed. Later, as they drove home with a sleeping Leo in the back seat, Roman finally broke the silence. I'm sorry about my parents, he said. They're from a different generation. Zariah looked out the window. That's a convenient excuse. Her tone surprised him. What do you mean? Roman, your parents weren't just uncomfortable because I'm not from their social circle. They were uncomfortable because I'm black. Roman gripped the steering wheel tighter. You don't have to think about it, Zariah said quietly. I do. Every day. They drove in silence for several minutes. The thing that bothered me most, Zariah finally continued, wasn't their behavior. It was yours. Roman felt like he'd been slapped. Mine? What did I do? It's what you didn't do. You didn't stand up for me, not really. You let their comments slide, their dismissive tones, their assumptions. You wanted to keep the peace more than you wanted to defend me. Roman pulled the car into their driveway and turned off the engine. In the back seat, Leo stirred but didn't wake. I didn't want to cause a scene at their anniversary party, Roman said weakly. And that's more important than showing me I belong with you? Zariah's voice was steady, but Roman could hear the hurt underneath. No, of course not, he insisted. You know how much you mean to me. To us. Zariah looked at him for a long moment. I've had to prove myself in rooms full of strangers all my life, she said softly, but I won't prove myself to someone I'm supposed to belong to. The words hit Roman like a physical blow. He reached for her hand, but she gently pulled away. I think I should go home tonight, she said. I need some space to think. Zariah, please, it's not just about tonight, Roman. It's about whether you're really ready to let someone into your life, into Leo's life. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. When it means standing up to your family, changing your routines, taking risks. Roman felt panic rising in his chest. I am ready. I want you in our lives. Zariah's eyes softened. I want that too. But wanting isn't always enough. Sometimes you have to fight for it. She helped him carry Leo inside and get him settled in bed. As she gathered her things to leave, Roman felt a desperate need to make her stay. What can I do? He asked. To fix this? Zariah paused at the door. Figure out what you're really afraid of, Roman, because I don't think it's your parents' disapproval. I think you're afraid of letting yourself need someone again, of what happens if I leave, like Angela did. After she left, Roman sat alone in his living room, her words echoing in his mind. Was she right? Was he holding back, keeping one foot out the door of their relationship because he was afraid of being abandoned again? The next morning, Leo woke up asking for Zariah in his own way, bringing out the sensitive plant she had given him, now thriving on his windowsill and looking around expectantly. Zariah's not here today, buddy, Roman explained gently, but we'll see her soon. Leo frowned, then went to his drawing table and began to work intensely on something. When Roman tried to see what he was drawing, Leo covered it protectively with his arm. Throughout the day, Roman tried calling Zariah, but she didn't answer. He left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. I'm sorry, he said in the final message. You're right. I was afraid. I am afraid, but not as afraid as I am of losing you. Please call me back. By evening, he still hadn't heard from her. Leo had finished his drawing and had placed it carefully on Zariah's plant. It showed 3 stick figures, a tall one, a short one, and a medium-sized one between them, all holding hands. Roman felt his heart breaking as he looked at the picture. Leo, who rarely showed attachment to anyone besides him, had let Zariah into his world completely, and now Roman had jeopardized that connection with his own fears. He was about to try calling Zariah again when his doorbell rang. He rushed to answer it, hope surging through him. But it wasn't Zariah, it was Kate. Have you seen the news? She asked without preamble, pushing past him into the house. What? No, I've been dealing with other things. Roman followed her into the living room, where she grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. It's about Zariah, Kate said, finding a local news channel. Roman felt his blood run cold. Is she hurt? What happened? No, nothing like that, Kate assured him quickly. Just watch. On the screen, a reporter was standing outside a building Roman recognized, the community center he was designing, and there was Zariah being interviewed. Ms. Wynne, you've been offered an incredible opportunity, the reporter was saying, a fellowship at the Carson Institute in Boston to develop your art therapy program for neurodivergent children. What made them select you? Zariah looked poised and professional on camera. I think they saw the potential for this work to change lives, to give children who communicate differently a way to express themselves and connect with the world. The fellowship is for 1 year, correct? When do you leave? If I accept, I would start in 3 weeks, Zariah replied. Roman felt the room spinning around him. 3 weeks. Boston, a year away. If you accept, Kate repeated, muting the TV. She hasn't said yes yet. Roman sank onto the couch. She didn't tell me about this. Maybe she was going to before. Kate looked at him closely. What happened between you two? She's not answering my calls either. Roman briefly explained the disaster at their parents' anniversary party, Zariah's hurt at his failure to stand up for her, her concerns about his emotional walls. Kate listened, then sighed heavily. You're an idiot, you know that? Thanks, sis. Very helpful. I'm serious. Zariah is the best thing that's happened to you and Leo since, well, ever. And you're going to let her go because you're scared. It's not that simple, Roman protested. She's talking about moving to Boston for a year. What about Leo? He's finally connecting with her, trusting her. And now she's going to leave? Kate shook her head. Is that what you're really worried about, Leo getting hurt? Or are you the one who's afraid of being left again? Roman didn't answer. The truth was too painful to admit. You know, Kate said more gently, not everyone leaves, Roman. Some people stay. Some people fight for what matters to them, but you have to let them. After Kate left, Roman checked on Leo, who was sleeping peacefully, his elephant clutched tightly to his chest. The drawing of the 3 stick figures was still propped against Zoraya's plant on the windowsill. Roman picked it up, studying the simple lines that represented their unlikely family. Leo had drawn them holding hands, something he himself rarely tolerated in real life. It was a wish, Roman realized, a hope for connection that Leo couldn't express in words. In that moment, looking at his son's drawing, Roman made a decision. He was done being afraid, done letting the past dictate his future, done letting Zoraya believe, even for a moment, that she wasn't worth fighting for. He picked up his phone and texted her, "I need to see you, please. Tomorrow morning. It's important." A long minute passed before 3 dots appeared, followed by her reply, "Okay, 10 a.m. Roman didn't sleep that night. Instead, he made plans, important ones. The next morning, when Zoraya arrived exactly at 10 a.m., Roman was ready. Leo was with Mrs. Davis next door, giving them space to talk. "Thank you for coming," Roman said, opening the door. Zoraya looked tired, her usual vibrancy dimmed. "I saw your messages. I just needed some time to think." "I know, and I'm sorry. You were right about everything." Roman took a deep breath. "I saw the news. About the fellowship in Boston." Zoraya nodded. "I was going to tell you, before everything happened at your parents'. It's an amazing opportunity," Roman said sincerely. "You deserve it." "But," Zoraya prompted, hearing the hesitation in his voice. "But nothing," Roman surprised her by saying. "If you want to accept it, you should. I'll support you completely." Zoraya looked confused. "Even though it means leaving for a year." "Who said anything about leaving?" Roman stepped closer to her. "Zoraya, I love you. I want to be with you. If that means figuring out how to make things work with you in Boston part of the time, then that's what we'll do." Zoraya's eyes widened. "You love me?" "More than I thought possible," Roman admitted. "And so does Leo. We can make this work. Visits, video calls, whatever it takes. I'm not afraid anymore. I don't want to lose you because I was too scared to fight for us." Tears filled Zoraya's eyes. "I love you too, Roman. Both of you. But are you sure? Long distance is hard enough without adding Leo's needs to the equation." "Leo needs you in his life," Roman said firmly, "and so do I. We'll figure it out together." Zoraya stepped into his arms then, and Roman held her tightly, feeling like he could finally breathe again. "There's something else," she said, pulling back slightly to look at him. "They offered me a choice. I can do the fellowship in Boston, or I can develop the program here in Charlotte. It would be more work, building it from scratch, but..." Hope surged through Roman's chest. "You could stay?" Zoraya nodded. "I wanted to talk to you first, to make sure that this was real." "It's real," Roman assured her. "The most real thing I've ever felt." As they stood there holding each other in his living room, Roman felt the last of his walls crumbling. He'd spent so long believing that love meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. Now he understood that sometimes it also meant healing. "There's someone else who needs to be part of this decision," Roman said, glancing at the clock. "Mrs. Davis is bringing Leo back in 15 minutes. Zoraya smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in days. "Then we'd better be ready to ask him." Together they went to the kitchen to prepare Leo's lunch, a peanut butter sandwich cut into perfect triangles. Not rectangles, never rectangles, just the way he liked it. Just the way they both loved him. When Leo returned home with Mrs. Davis, he immediately sensed something different. He stood in the doorway, his eyes darting between Roman and Zoraya, who were waiting for him in the living room. "Hey, buddy," Roman said gently. "Zoraya's here. We want to talk to you about something important." Leo clutched his elephant tighter but didn't run away. Progress, Roman thought. Zoraya knelt down so she was at Leo's eye level, though she knew he wouldn't look directly at her. "Leo, I've been offered a special job to help kids like you make art. I could go away to another city, or I could stay here and do the job. What do you think?" Leo didn't answer right away. He walked to his drawing table, picked up the picture of the 3 stick figures holding hands and brought it back. He handed it to Zoraya without a word. Zoraya looked at the drawing, then at Roman, tears forming in her eyes. "I think that's a yes," Roman said, his voice thick with emotion. "He wants you to stay." Leo touched Zoraya's hand, a brief, light touch but intentional. Then he went to check on his sensitive plant, his way of returning to normal routine. "I guess that settles it," Zoraya said, wiping away a tear. "I'll tell the Carson Institute I want to establish the program here in Charlotte." Roman pulled her into his arms. "Are you sure? I don't want you to regret giving up the Boston opportunity." "I'm not giving up anything," Zariah assured him. "I'm choosing something better." Over the next few weeks, their lives settled into a new pattern. Zariah began the groundwork for her fellowship program, meeting with local hospitals and schools. Roman continued his work on the community center, now with renewed purpose. And Leo, to everyone's amazement, started showing small but significant signs of progress. He began saying 1 or 2 words at a time, usually to Zariah. "Blue," he would say, pointing to a crayon he wanted, or more, when he wanted her to continue reading a story. "Do you think he's improving because of you?" Roman asked Zariah one evening as they watched Leo arrange his blocks in the living room. "I think he's improving because he feels safe," Zariah replied. "He knows we're not trying to change him, we're just giving him space to be himself." As summer turned to fall, Zariah started spending more nights at Roman's house. They didn't make a big announcement about it to Leo. They simply let it happen naturally, gradually adding her belongings to their home. A toothbrush in the bathroom, a few clothes in Roman's closet, her favorite coffee mug in the kitchen cabinet. One Saturday morning in October, Roman woke up to find Zariah's side of the bed empty. Concerned, he got up and walked quietly through the house, stopping when he heard soft voices from Leo's room. The door was partially open. Roman peered in and saw Leo sitting on his bed with Zariah beside him, looking at a picture book. To Roman's astonishment, Leo was pointing at different images and naming them. "Tree," he said clearly, touching a picture of a forest. "That's right," Zariah encouraged him. "And what's this?" "Bird," Leo replied. "Bluebird." Roman's heart swelled with joy and pride. He must have made a sound because Zariah looked up and saw him. "Leo's helping me learn the names of things," she explained with a smile. Leo didn't stop his naming game when Roman entered, which was another small miracle. Usually, any interruption to his focus caused him to shut down. "He's doing so well," Roman said, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "Daddy," Leo said, looking briefly in Roman's direction before returning to the book. "Look, elephant." Roman felt tears spring to his eyes. Leo rarely called him Daddy, and never in front of others. Later that day, when Leo was engrossed in a puzzle, Roman pulled Zariah into the kitchen. "Move in with us," he said without preamble. "Officially. All the way." Zariah raised her eyebrows. "Are you sure? That's a big change for Leo." "You're already here most of the time," Roman pointed out. "And Leo is doing better than ever. He wants you here, so do I." Zariah smiled. "Okay, yes, I'll move in." They sealed the decision with a kiss, both feeling like they were finally building the family they had always wanted. Unconventional, perhaps, but filled with love and understanding. The next challenge came from an unexpected direction. Roman's parents had been suspiciously quiet since the anniversary party disaster. Then, one evening in late October, Eleanor Sutter called. "Roman, darling, your father and I would like to have dinner with you. And Zariah, of course, and little Leo." Roman was immediately suspicious. "Why the sudden interest, Mom? You haven't called in months." "Can't a mother want to see her son and grandson?" Eleanor asked, sounding hurt. "Besides, we've been doing some thinking and some learning." "Learning?" Roman repeated skeptically. "About autism," Eleanor said, surprising him. "We've been reading books." "And your father joined an online support group for grandparents of children with special needs." Roman was stunned into silence. "We want to try again," Eleanor continued. "We were wrong, Roman. The way we behaved at the party, the things we've said about Leo over the years. We want to do better." Roman didn't know what to say. His parents had never admitted they were wrong about anything in his entire life. "Let me talk to Zariah," he said finally. "I'll call you back." When he told Zariah about the conversation, she was cautiously optimistic. "People can change," she said. "If they're really making an effort, maybe we should give them a chance." "But what if it's just for show?" Roman worried. "I don't want them hurting you again, or Leo." "We won't know unless we try," Zariah pointed out. "And it would be good for Leo to have grandparents who understand him." So they agreed to dinner at Roman's parents' house the following weekend. Roman spent the days leading up to it preparing Leo, explaining that they would be visiting Grandma and Grandpa, but they would leave immediately if he felt uncomfortable. When they arrived at the Sutter mansion, Roman was tense, expecting the worst. But Eleanor greeted them at the door with a genuine smile and, most surprisingly, no attempt to touch Leo. "Hello, Leo," she said, kneeling down to his level, but keeping her distance. "I have something for you in the living room. Would you like to see it?" Leo didn't respond verbally, but he followed his grandmother curiously. In the living room, a small table had been set up with drawing supplies. high-quality paper, special markers, and modeling clay. Beside it was a small tent-like structure made of sheets, with soft pillows inside. "Your daddy told me you sometimes need a quiet place," Eleanor explained. "So I made you one. If things get too loud or busy, you can go in there and no one will bother you." Roman exchanged a shocked glance with Zariah. This was not what he had expected at all. Richard Sutter entered the room, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Is everything all right? Does he like it?" To everyone's surprise, Leo walked straight to the drawing table and began organizing the markers by color. It was his way of showing approval. "I think he loves it," Zariah said kindly. This was very thoughtful. Dinner was a revelation. The food was carefully prepared with Leo in mind. Simple dishes without mixed textures, everything served separately on the plate. Eleanor and Richard spoke softly, avoided sudden movements, and asked thoughtful questions about Leo's progress. "We've been watching videos online," Eleanor explained when Roman commented on their new understanding, about how to interact with children on the spectrum. "And we found a therapist who's been helping us understand." "A therapist?" Roman couldn't hide his shock. His father had always dismissed therapy as nonsense for weak people. Richard cleared his throat. "After the anniversary party, Kate had some strong words for us, made us realize we were losing our son and grandson because of our ignorance. And our prejudice," Eleanor added quietly, looking at Zariah. "We owe you an apology, Zariah. The way we treated you was inexcusable." Zariah nodded, accepting the apology with grace. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." "We're trying to do better," Richard said. "Not just with Leo, but with everything. Old dogs can learn new tricks, it turns out." The evening continued with a warmth Roman hadn't felt in his parents' home since childhood. When Leo eventually needed a break, he used the quiet tent Eleanor had made for him, emerging 20 minutes later, calm and ready to rejoin the family. As they drove home that night, Roman felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. "I can't believe they've changed so much," he said to Zariah. "People will surprise you," Zariah replied, "if you give them the chance." The next few months passed in a blur of happy routines and new milestones. Zariah officially moved in, bringing her plants, her books, and her calming presence to their home. Leo continued to make progress, speaking more often, even starting to use simple sentences. Roman's parents became regular visitors, tentative at first, then with growing confidence as they learned to connect with Leo on his terms. Richard even took an interest in Leo's space drawings, using his connections to arrange a special tour of the local planetarium just for Leo. In December, Zariah's fellowship program officially launched. The Carson Institute for Creative Development opened a satellite location in Charlotte, with Zariah as its director. The program focused on using art therapy to help neurodivergent children express themselves and connect with others. "We're creating a space where different isn't wrong," Zariah explained during the small opening ceremony, "where communication doesn't have to be verbal to be valid." Roman watched her speak with pride, amazed at the strong, passionate woman who had somehow chosen to love him and his son. That night, after Leo was asleep, Roman took Zariah's hand and led her to the backyard. The December air was cool, but he had set up heaters on the porch and laid out blankets on the comfortable outdoor furniture. "What's all this?" Zariah asked, looking at the fairy lights he had strung up and the champagne chilling in an ice bucket. "I wanted to celebrate your success," Roman said, pouring 2 glasses. "What you've accomplished with the Institute is incredible." They toasted and sat together under the stars, talking about the future, about the children Zariah would help, about Leo's continuing progress. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," Roman admitted. "For so long, it was just one challenge after another. Now everything seems too perfect." "Not perfect," Zariah corrected him. "Real. There will always be hard days. Leo will always be Leo, with all the challenges that brings. But we face them together now." Roman took a deep breath. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, facing the future together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Zariah's eyes widened. "Roman, I had this whole speech planned," he said with a nervous laugh, "about how you changed our lives, how you speak Leo's language when no one else could. But what it comes down to is this. I love you, Zariah, and so does Leo. We want you to be part of our family forever." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Zariah's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Roman slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly. They kissed under the stars, wrapped in blankets and the certainty of their love. The next morning, they decided to tell Leo about their engagement. They sat him down at breakfast, explaining in simple terms that Zariah would be staying with them forever, that they would be a family. Leo listened, his face serious. Then he got up from the table and left the room without a word. Roman and Zariah exchanged worried glances. "Should I go after him?" Roman asked. "Give him a minute," Zariah advised. "It's a big change to process." A few minutes later, Leo returned. He was carrying his drawing pad. He placed it on the table and pushed it toward them. On the page was a drawing of their house. In front of it stood 3 stick figures, the same ones from his earlier drawing. But this time, he had added a 4th, smaller figure. "What's this, Leo?" Zariah asked gently, pointing to the new addition. Leo looked at the drawing, then up at them, making brief eye contact, something he rarely did. "Baby," he said clearly. "Baby sister." Roman nearly choked on his coffee. "Leo, buddy, there's no baby yet." Leo shook his head stubbornly. "Baby sister," he repeated, tapping the figure on the page. Zariah and Roman looked at each other, both speechless. Then Zariah started to laugh. "Well," she said, "I guess Leo has plans for our family." Roman joined her laughter, feeling a joy so complete it almost hurt. He's always been full of surprises. The day of their wedding arrived in early spring, exactly 1 year after they had first met. They kept it small and intimate, hosting it in their backyard. Leo was the ring bearer, proudly carrying the rings on a small pillow, wearing noise-cancelling headphones decorated with ribbons to match the wedding colors. Roman's parents were there, Eleanor dabbing at tears throughout the ceremony. Kate stood as Zariah's maid of honor, taking full credit for the match in her speech. Zariah's parents had flown in from Chicago, her father walking her down the aisle with pride. As they exchanged vows, Roman looked at Zariah in her simple white dress, at Leo standing solemnly beside them, at the friends and family gathered to support them. He thought of all the times he had believed he would always be alone, that no one would ever understand his life with Leo, that he had to carry every burden by himself. "I thought I was broken," he said during his vows, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought our life was too complicated for anyone else to share. You showed me that love doesn't require perfection. It just requires courage." Zariah's vows were equally moving. "You and Leo taught me that family isn't about fitting into someone else's mold. It's about creating your own shape together. I promise to always speak your language, to listen when you can't find the words, to stay even when it's hard." The reception was carefully planned with Leo in mind, not too loud, not too crowded, with a quiet room available when he needed breaks. To everyone's surprise, he stayed for most of the celebration, even dancing with Zariah in his own way, standing on her feet as she moved gently to the music. As the evening wound down, Roman found Zariah sitting with his mother on the porch, deep in conversation. "I never thought he would find someone who understood," Eleanor was saying. "After Angela left, he built such walls around himself and Leo." "He had to," Zariah replied. "He was protecting Leo and himself." "Well, I'm grateful he found you," Eleanor said, patting Zariah's hand. "You've brought my son back to life." Roman cleared his throat, and both women looked up. "May I steal my wife for a dance?" he asked, still savoring the word wife. Eleanor smiled and excused herself. Roman took Zariah's hand and led her to the middle of the yard, where fairy lights twinkled overhead. "Happy?" he asked as they swayed to the soft music. "More than I ever thought possible," Zariah replied, resting her head on his chest. They danced in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Zariah pulled back slightly, looking up at him with a mysterious smile. "What?" Roman asked. "Remember Leo's drawing? With the baby sister?" Roman nodded, chuckling. "His imagination is getting quite detailed these days." "It might not be just imagination," Zariah said, her eyes sparkling. "I took a test this morning." Roman froze mid-step. "You're pregnant," Zariah confirmed. "About 6 weeks. Too early to know if it's a girl, of course, but—" Roman pulled her close, his heart racing. "Leo knew," he whispered in amazement. "Somehow, he knew. He sees things differently than we do," Zariah reminded him. "Maybe he noticed changes in me before I did." They resumed their dance, both lost in thoughts of the future, a future that now included not just the 3 of them, but a new life they had created together. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Leo was asleep, exhausted from the day's events, Roman and Zariah stood in the doorway of his room, watching him sleep. "Are you scared?" Zariah whispered. "About the baby?" Roman considered the question. "A little," he admitted, "but not like before. Now I know we can handle whatever comes." Even if the baby is like Leo? Zariah asked, voicing the question that had been on both their minds. Roman looked at his son, peaceful in sleep, clutching his elephant. Especially then, he said firmly, because now I know that being different isn't being less. It's just speaking another language. Zariah squeezed his hand, understanding everything he couldn't put into words. Their life together wouldn't be perfect. There would be challenges, setbacks, hard days when Leo's world became too overwhelming. There would be judgmental strangers, insensitive comments, moments of doubt. But there would also be this, quiet moments of connection, unexpected breakthroughs, a love that didn't require words to be understood. As they closed Leo's door and walked hand in hand to their bedroom, Roman thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a reluctant blind date to a family, from isolation to belonging, from fear to hope, all because Zariah had the courage to listen when everyone else had given up, all because she spoke the language of his heart and his son's, all because she wasn't afraid of complex. Spring turned to summer, and Zariah's pregnancy began to show. Roman found himself watching her with a mixture of joy and anxiety as she moved around their home, her hand often resting on her growing belly. "Do you think we should move to a bigger house?" he asked one evening as they sat on the porch. "We could use more space with the baby coming." Zariah shook her head. "This is Leo's home. He knows every corner, every sound. Moving would be too disruptive for him right now." Roman nodded, grateful once again for her understanding. "We could convert the guest room into a nursery. It's right next to our bedroom." "Perfect," Zariah agreed. "But let's involve Leo in the planning. The more prepared he is, the easier the transition will be." They began by showing Leo picture books about babies and families. He showed interest in his own way, not asking questions like other children might, but studying the images carefully, adding babies to all his family drawings. One Saturday morning, Roman took Leo to the hardware store to pick out paint for the nursery. He'd expected resistance. Leo rarely did well in noisy, crowded places, but his son seemed determined to help prepare for his sister's arrival. "What color do you think the baby would like, buddy?" Roman asked, showing Leo the paint samples. Leo studied them carefully, then pointed to a soft yellow color. "Sunshine," he said simply. "Yellow it is," Roman agreed, touched by Leo's thoughtfulness. At home, Zariah was sorting through baby clothes that Kate had dropped off, hand-me-downs from her own daughter. "Look what Leo picked out," Roman said, showing her the paint sample. "It's perfect," Zariah smiled. "Sunshine yellow for our little girl." The 20-week ultrasound had confirmed what Leo had somehow known all along. They were having a daughter. They decided to name her Maya, after Zariah's grandmother. As Zariah's belly grew, so did Leo's curiosity. He would sometimes sit near her, watching intently as the baby moved beneath her skin. "Would you like to feel her kick?" Zariah asked him one day, expecting him to refuse. Leo rarely initiated physical contact. To her surprise, Leo nodded. Very gently, Zariah took his hand and placed it on her belly where the baby was most active. When Maya kicked against his palm, Leo's eyes widened in wonder. "She's saying hello," Zariah explained softly. "Hello, Maya," Leo whispered, using one of his increasingly frequent complete sentences. Roman, watching from the doorway, felt his throat tighten with emotion. Every day brought new miracles, small moments of connection that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Not everything was easy, of course. As Zariah's pregnancy progressed, her energy decreased. There were days when the demands of her work at the institute, combined with Leo's needs, left her exhausted. "You should hire some help," Eleanor suggested during one of her visits, watching as Zariah dozed on the couch while Leo arranged his blocks nearby. "At least until after the baby comes." "We've talked about it," Roman admitted, "but Leo doesn't do well with new people in the house." "What about someone he already knows?" Eleanor suggested. "Mrs. Davis, perhaps, or me." Roman looked at his mother in surprise. "You?" Eleanor smoothed her expensive skirt nervously. "I could come by a few afternoons a week, help with dinner, laundry, give Zariah a chance to rest." She glanced at Leo. "I've been reading more about routine and consistency. I think I could follow Leo's schedule now." Roman was touched by his mother's offer and by how far she had come in her understanding of Leo's needs. "That would be really helpful, Mom. Thank you." And so Eleanor Sutter, who had once employed a staff of 5 to maintain her own home, began coming to Roman and Zariah's house 3 afternoons a week. She learned Leo's precise preferences, how his sandwiches must be cut, which cup was for juice and which for water, the exact order of his bedtime routine. To everyone's surprise, Leo seemed to accept his grandmother's presence easily, perhaps because she now approached him on his terms, rather than expecting him to adapt to hers. As Zariah entered her third trimester, they transformed the guest room into a nursery. Roman and Leo painted the walls sunshine yellow. Zariah arranged books and stuffed animals on white shelves. Richard Sutter, not to be outdone by his wife, arrived one weekend with a handcrafted wooden crib that he had made himself. "I used to do woodworking when I was younger," he explained gruffly when Roman expressed his amazement. "Thought I'd pick it up again." The crib was beautiful, with smooth, rounded edges and a gentle rocking mechanism. Carved into the headboard was a small elephant, a nod to Leo's beloved stuffed animal. "It's incredible, Dad," Roman said, genuinely moved. "Thank you." "Well," Richard replied, clearing his throat, "I wanted to do something special for my granddaughter." Meanwhile, Leo continued to make progress in his communication skills. His art therapist at Zariah's Institute reported breakthrough after breakthrough. He was using more words, making eye contact more frequently, even playing simple games with one or two other children during his therapy sessions. "He's not changing who he is," Zariah explained to Roman after one particularly good session. "He's just finding more ways to be himself in the world." Roman marveled at his son's growth and at Zariah's insight. She had taught him to see Leo's differences not as deficits to be fixed, but as unique perspectives to be understood. At 7 months pregnant, Zariah faced her first real health scare. She woke one night with sharp pains in her abdomen. Roman rushed her to the hospital, Kate coming over to stay with Leo. Braxton Hicks contractions, the doctor eventually diagnosed, after several terrifying hours of monitoring. False labor. "But your blood pressure is higher than we'd like, Mrs. Sutter. I'm recommending bed rest for the next week, and then we'll reassess." On the drive home, Zariah was quiet, her hand protectively covering her belly. "Are you okay?" Roman asked, reaching for her other hand. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not just about the pregnancy, about everything. What if I can't handle being a mother to both Leo and the baby? What if Leo resents her for taking my attention? What if—" "Hey," Roman interrupted gently, squeezing her hand. "Remember what you told me when we first met, about not running from complex?" Zariah smiled faintly. "I did say that, didn't I?" "We'll figure it out together," Roman promised, "one day at a time." The week of bed rest was challenging. Leo was confused by the change in routine, by Zariah being confined to the bedroom. He would stand in the doorway watching her with worried eyes. "It's okay, Leo," Zariah would assure him. "The baby and I just need to rest." Eleanor was a godsend during this time, taking over household duties and helping with Leo. Kate came by often, bringing meals and magazines to keep Zariah entertained. Even Richard stopped by daily, usually with some small gift for Leo, a new book about space, a special drawing pen. After a week, Zariah's blood pressure stabilized, and the doctor lifted most of the restrictions, though he cautioned her to take things easy for the remainder of her pregnancy. That night, as they lay in bed, Roman noticed Zariah staring at the ceiling, deep in thought. "What's on your mind?" he asked. "I was just thinking about family," she said softly, "about how it's not what I expected, but it's exactly what I needed." Roman pulled her close, his hand resting on her rounded belly. "Me too." As Zariah's due date approached, they prepared Leo as best they could for the changes to come. They showed him where the baby would sleep, explained that she would cry sometimes, and assured him that they would still have special time together. "Maya needs you to be her big brother," Roman told him, "to help teach her things, like you teach me and Zariah." Leo seemed to take this responsibility seriously. He carefully selected toys from his own collection that he deemed suitable for a baby, setting them aside in a special box for Maya. One evening, about 2 weeks before Zariah's due date, Leo presented her with a drawing. It showed a baby in a crib, with musical notes floating above her. "What's this, Leo?" Zariah asked. "Maya's song," Leo explained, "to help her sleep." Then, to both Roman and Zariah's astonishment, Leo began to hum a simple, sweet melody. It was the first time they had ever heard him create music. "That's beautiful," Zariah whispered, tears in her eyes. "She'll love it." 3 days later, Zariah went into labor. It happened quickly, too quickly to arrange for someone to stay with Leo. Roman called his parents in a panic. "We'll be right there," Eleanor promised. "Try to stay calm." By the time Richard and Eleanor arrived, Zariah was having contractions every 5 minutes. Roman helped her to the car, pausing only to look back at Leo, who stood in the doorway with his grandparents. "I'll call as soon as the baby comes," Roman promised him. "Grandma and Grandpa will take good care of you." To everyone's surprise, Leo stepped forward and hugged Roman quickly, a rare initiation of physical contact that left Roman speechless. "Take care of Maya," Leo said solemnly, "and Zariah." "I will, buddy," Roman promised, his voice thick with emotion. "I will." The birth was faster than expected. Just 4 hours after arriving at the hospital, Maya Eleanor Sutter entered the world, a healthy 7 pounds, with a head of dark hair like her mother's. "She's perfect," Roman whispered, holding his daughter for the first time. "Absolutely perfect." Zariah, exhausted but radiant, reached out to touch Maya's tiny hand. "Welcome to our family, little one." Roman called his parents' house, where Leo was waiting anxiously for news. Eleanor put him on the phone. "You have a baby sister," Roman told him. "Maya is here." There was a pause, then Leo's small voice. "Is she yellow like sunshine?" Roman laughed, tears in his eyes. "No, buddy. She has brown skin like Zariah and dark hair, but I think she has your eyes." "When can I see her?" Leo asked, the most direct question Roman had ever heard from his son. "Tomorrow morning," Roman promised. "Grandma and Grandpa will bring you to the hospital." The next day, Leo arrived clutching his elephant and a drawing he had made for the baby. He approached Zariah's hospital bed cautiously, his eyes fixed on the small bundle in her arms. "Leo, this is Maya," Zariah said softly. "Maya, this is your big brother Leo." Leo stood very still, studying the baby's face. Maya's eyes opened, seeming to look right at him. "She knows me," Leo said with certainty. "Of course she does," Zariah smiled. "You're her brother." Leo carefully placed his drawing on the bed beside Maya. It showed 2 stick figures, a big one and a very small one, holding hands. "That's you and Maya," Roman guessed. Leo nodded. "I'll teach her things." Eleanor, watching from the doorway, wiped tears from her eyes. Richard put his arm around her shoulders, his own eyes suspiciously moist. "Our family," he said quietly. "Who would have thought?" The first few weeks with Maya were a whirlwind of feedings, diaper changes, and very little sleep. Roman took time off from work, handling night duties so Zariah could recover. Eleanor came by daily, cooking meals and helping with Leo's routine, while the new parents adjusted to life with an infant. To everyone's relief, Leo seemed to accept Maya's presence with remarkable ease. He was curious about her, often sitting near Zariah while she nursed, watching Maya's tiny hands wave in the air. "She's trying to talk," Leo explained matter-of-factly. "With her hands." Zariah nodded. "I think you're right. Maybe you can help us understand what she's saying." Leo took this role seriously. He would observe Maya carefully, then announce her needs. "She's hungry," or "she wants her elephant." Often, he was right. One night, when Maya was about 3 weeks old, Roman woke to the sound of crying. He reached for Zariah, but her side of the bed was empty. Getting up, he followed the sound to the nursery. There, he found Zariah in the rocking chair with Maya at her breast. But what stopped him in the doorway was the sight of Leo, sitting on the floor beside them, humming the lullaby he had created for his sister. Maya's eyes were drooping, soothed by her brother's song. Roman stood watching, overwhelmed by love for his family. This unlikely, unexpected, perfectly imperfect family that had formed against all odds. As summer turned to fall, life settled into a new normal. Zariah returned to work part-time at the institute, bringing Maya with her most days. The satellite program was thriving, with a waiting list of families seeking help for their neurodivergent children. Leo started first grade at a progressive school that specialized in working with children on the autism spectrum. He still had challenges, loud noises still overwhelmed him, changes in routine still caused anxiety, but he had tools now to manage these difficulties, and he had people who understood. One Sunday afternoon in October, Roman sat on their back porch, watching as Zariah showed Maya the falling leaves. Leo was nearby, meticulously sorting acorns by size. "Daddy!" Leo called, an urgency in his voice that made Roman look up sharply. "Look!" Roman followed Leo's pointing finger just in time to see Maya, propped against a pile of cushions on the lawn, reach out and touch a bright red maple leaf that Zariah was holding. The baby's face lit up with a smile. "She likes the colors," Leo explained. "Like me." "Yes," Roman agreed, his heart full. "Like you." Later that evening, after both children were asleep, Roman and Zariah sat together on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the October chill. "I keep thinking about that day in the park," Roman said, "when you drew in the dirt to calm Leo down. How did you know to do that?" Zariah leaned her head against his shoulder. "I didn't, really. I just tried to meet him where he was, instead of forcing him to come to me." You spoke his language, Roman said softly. And he spoke mine, Zariah replied. That's what love is, isn't it? Finding ways to understand each other even when it's hard. Roman nodded, thinking of all the languages spoken in their home now. Leo's careful words and precise drawings, Maya's infant coos and expressive eyes, his own architect's vision, seeing the structure beneath the surface. Zariah's compassion, translating feelings into understanding. Different languages, but the same message. You are seen. You are heard. You belong. As the years passed, their family continued to grow and change. Maya developed into a vibrant, talkative child who adored her quiet big brother. Leo remained autistic. It wasn't something to be overcome or fixed, but he found more ways to navigate the world, to share his unique perspective. When Maya was 3, she announced one day, "I speak Leo language." Proudly, she demonstrated how she could sit beside her brother in silence, simply being present, or how she knew exactly which of his toys could be touched and which couldn't. Leo, now 9, accepted his sister's declaration with a rare smile. "And I speak Maya language," he replied, referring to his patient tolerance of her exuberance, her constant questions, her need for hugs and attention. Roman and Zariah watched their children with wonder, seeing in them the best of themselves, and something entirely new. When Maya started kindergarten, her teacher called one afternoon with a concern. "Maya spent recess sitting alone under a tree," the teacher explained. "When I asked her to join the other children, she said she was being like Leo. I'm worried she's isolating herself." Zariah wasn't worried. That evening, she asked Maya about it. "Why did you sit under the tree at recess?" she asked gently. "Jimmy was sad," Maya explained as if it were obvious. "He doesn't like loud noises like Leo, so I showed him the quiet place and we watched ants together." The teacher called again the next week, this time with a different tone. "I don't know what Maya did, but Jimmy spoke in class today. First time all year. His mother was in tears when I told her." Zariah shared this with Roman that night after the children were in bed. "She has your gift," Roman said, "for understanding people who communicate differently. And your patience," Zariah added. "She sat with that boy for 3 recesses before he felt comfortable enough to talk." As they discussed their daughter's empathy, they heard a sound from Leo's room. Getting up to check, they found him sitting on his bed, looking at an old photograph, Roman and Zariah on their wedding day, with little Leo standing solemnly between them. "Everything okay, buddy?" Roman asked. Leo nodded. "I was remembering," he said, "before Maya, before Zariah." Roman sat on the edge of the bed. "What do you remember?" "It was quiet," Leo said, "but a sad quiet, not a good quiet." Roman swallowed hard. "Yes, it was." "Now it's loud sometimes," Leo continued, "but a happy loud." Zariah joined them, sitting carefully on Leo's other side. "Is that okay? The happy loud?" Leo considered the question with his usual thoroughness. "Yes," he decided finally, "it's our family sound." Years later, when Maya was 8 and Leo 14, the family took a trip to the beach. Leo had always been fascinated by the ocean, but overwhelmed by its sensory intensity. They had tried beach trips before with mixed success. This time, armed with years of experience and preparation, they found a quiet stretch of shore early in the morning. Leo wore his noise-cancelling headphones and special sunglasses. Maya, understanding her brother's needs, played quietly nearby, collecting shells and arranging them in patterns she knew he would appreciate. Roman and Zariah sat on a blanket, watching their children, the careful boy and the vibrant girl, so different and yet so connected. "Did you ever imagine this?" Zariah asked, leaning against Roman's shoulder. "That day in the park when we first met?" Roman shook his head. "Never. I was just trying to survive each day. I couldn't see a future like this." "And now? Now I can't imagine any other life," Roman replied, squeezing her hand. They watched as Leo ventured closer to the water's edge, Maya following at a respectful distance. When a wave splashed higher than expected, Leo stepped back quickly, his body tensing. But before Roman or Zariah could intervene, Maya was there, not touching her brother but standing nearby, drawing in the wet sand with a stick. A simple house, a sun, a tree. Leo's tension visibly eased. He knelt down beside his sister, and with one finger added a cloud to her drawing. "It might rain later," he said. Maya nodded seriously. "That's okay. We brought umbrellas." Roman felt Zariah's hand tighten around his. They didn't need words to share what they were feeling as they watched their children communicate in the language they had created together. A language of acceptance, of understanding, of love. a language that had started on a blind date neither of them had wanted to attend, a language that had grown in a park with a simple drawing in the dirt, a language that now filled their home, their lives, their hearts, the language of family, spoken not always with words, but with patience, with presence, with the quiet certainty that you are exactly where you belong, with exactly the people who understand you. As the sun rose higher over the ocean, painting the water with light, Roman looked at his family, his brilliant, sensitive son, his compassionate, spirited daughter, his wise, loving wife, and knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly the life he was meant to live. Not perfect, not always easy, but real, whole, chosen. And in Leo's next drawing, completed that evening at the beach house, there were no clouds over the sun.